listening to the Certified Personal Trainer Podcast, a show by personal trainers for personal trainers. It's time to become a better trainer, get more clients, and change more lives.
Hello, Coach Alex here with Fitness Mentors, back with part 2 of our podcast with Tim Henriques on Strength 101. If you haven't checked out the first part yet, please do. We dove a lot into the science behind strength, the programming behind strength, and built a really solid foundation for what strength is and how to achieve it. In part 2 here, we are going to dive deeper into the nutrition side of strength. How do you eat to build strength, and the psychology side of strength? How do you keep yourself mentally strong as well to keep moving forward? And then there was a ton of listener questions, and we also dive into those on this part 2 as well. So hope you enjoy. All right. Let's dive into nutrition a little bit. Matt was kind enough to send some notes and think this through. And Matt, I wonder if you want to touch on some of these points.
I would love to. Yeah, so real quick, my name is Matt McLeod. I'm a registered dietitian. I'm also an online trainer. I've been doing this since about 2015. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and dive into... Hey, Matt. Yes, please.
Matt, you're a regular. Oh, no, I'm just saying hi in response to you.
Hey, Alex. How's it going, man? I appreciate you.
Good. Appreciate you.
Amazing. All right. Let's go ahead. So the first thing, the main thing. So as you saw, I thought the hierarchy of strength that Tim had was good. You could see that nutrition was kind of up towards the tip. And honestly, I would agree with where he had it as well, because for strength, especially whenever you think about like athletes and things like that, their nutrition can vary all over the place, and some of them can still get absolutely ridiculous results. So it's like there's always going to be a spectrum with this stuff, but obviously the more seriously that you take your nutrition, the better potential you're going to have for better performance gains in the strength field. So the first point is biasing a moderate to higher carb intake to fuel your gym performance and make sure that your glycogen stores are completely filled. So where your brain and your muscles both prefer carbohydrates for fuel, especially during anaerobic work, so like heavy lifting. As I put here, so your muscles literally have to fire the quickest possible. They are going to use the glucose within the muscle cells. And so that is going to be the most efficient way that your body is going to do that. So it makes sense that whenever you're going for strength, whenever you're going performance, we want to maximize those stores, those glycogen stores, as much as possible. And you can only do that if you are consuming enough carbohydrates and also being in a calorie surplus, which I believe is so on the very bottom point, right? So just leading into that, being in a calorie surplus, this just means consuming more than you are burning. And for strength, we want to give ourselves every opportunity possible to maximize both our recovery in the gym, and then also, again, our performance in the gym. And so it just makes sense whenever you're in a calorie surplus, you have an excess of nutrients that are available for your body to use. And ideally, having those extra calories come from things like carbohydrates is probably going to be ideal. And so let's see. Then the second point, so biasing. So whenever we're talking about food quality and like what you should actually eat or what you should prescribe to your clients to eat around your workouts, that's going to be huge, right? Because the main thing, if we're going for strength, we want to make sure that we're giving ourselves every chance of success to actually have the best performance possible within that day. And if you are eating, fast food for your pre-workout, for example, an hour before the gym, you're going to come in bloated. You're going to come in, you're just not going to, your digestion could be messed up. It's just, you're not going to give yourself the best opportunity of success if your stomach is hurting the entire time and you have to use the restroom, right? So that's going to be huge. But then also on the flip side, you don't want to it's probably not going to be a good idea to go in fasted or to go in whenever you haven't eaten for several hours, because then, I don't know if I'm sure some of you guys have mistimed your pre-workout meal, and then you get in the gym, you get through your warm-ups, and then all of a sudden your stomach starts growling. It's like, I don't know about you guys, but my peak performance is not whenever I'm hungry. So it's like, that's just the actual timing of the meal is something that you definitely want to consider. But then as far as the actual quality of what makes up that meal, this is where, I know, sound like a broken record, but you're going to want it to be higher in carbohydrates and also electrolytes to fuel your lifts. And ideally as well, I would typically recommend going like lower to moderate fat intake as well, because sometimes the fat can cause some digestion issues for people. And this is the same thing with a higher fiber meal, right? So having a big salad, or it depends on what you can tolerate as well. Some people can tolerate a huge bowl of oatmeal and some fruit right before a workout and be perfectly fine. However, if that feels like a rock in your stomach, knowing your own differences on whenever you eat different foods, that's where some trial and error, and maybe even noting, having a certain pre-workout meal that is your go-to pre-workout meal, and noting how you feel after that and what time. If you really want to get serious about this stuff, it's like keeping a food journal, tracking things like that. It's like, what time did you eat it? How did you feel? How did the session go? Right. And if you want to make note of those things over time, you can notice those patterns so that you can replicate that. And then you don't have to think twice. You're like, okay, I know I feel really good having a banana and some cereal and a protein shake and some fruit before my training session, right? Or if it's a heavier meal, right? Or whatever. That's going to be huge. And then of course, having moderate protein intake is also going to be important, just so that you can aid the muscle building process and the recovery process before you actually get your session started. And I think that is for the most part, as far as the peri-workout nutrition goes, so like I said, that was the pre-workout meal. Intra-workout, so like during your workouts, if you're in a calorie surplus for the entire day, it's like, again, especially if this is just strength training, like we're just talking to powerlifters, it's different if you're athletes and like you have like a lifting portion, and then also you're going to go do some conditioning or something like that. That's whenever you might want to consider something like a more advanced intra workout formula. Or maybe if you just burn through stuff very quickly, or if it's been several hours since your last meal and you might get a little bit hungry during the meal or during the workout, that's whenever something like Gatorade or some type of electrolyte drink could be helpful, just so that you have some nutrients coming in during your session. But yeah, like I said, powerlifting and lifting weights, this is actually something good to talk about. You probably don't need as much extra food as you think you do. A lot of powerlifters can get really carried away with how much. Whenever I say be in a calorie surplus, I don't mean just like eat everything you see, because there's going to be diminishing returns, and you're just going to end up adding more fat than what you actually need. So it's basically like, for a calorie surplus, you only need it's a couple hundred extra calories to actually have that surplus that you need to give your body that surplus and probably maximize performance. So that's definitely also something to think about. And as far as the post-workout meal goes, it's going to be very similar to the pre-workout meal. To be 100% honest, if you have, I think the only thing really worth mentioning here is the, like high glycemic carbs that people can tend to get caught up on and things like that. But unless you have another training session, like if you have an AM session and a PM session, or maybe you have a workout session and then you have a running session later on, or whatever, if they're only a couple hours apart, that's whenever something like more high glycemic carbohydrates might be more important, so that they can, again, try and replenish those glycogen stores as quickly as possible. But it's like, if you're not working out until the next day, then what matters is just your total nutrition for the entire day, right? Because everything that you eat, so if you work out in the morning, everything that you eat the rest of the day, that is going to still be fueling your performance on the next day as well. So don't get too caught up in like downing pixie sticks or sweet tarts right after your workout or something. Like you're going to be okay. Just eat normal foods. And again, the mix of moderate protein, lower to moderate fat, and then higher carbohydrates is probably a good idea. Okay. I think that's about it. I think that mostly, actually the only other thing that I thought about would be like supplements. And the only two supplements, and I think Tim probably agreed, that I can think of that would be helpful would be like caffeine and creatine monohydrate. Like those are going to be the only two for the most part, besides like an actual carbohydrate drink, like multivitamin or something like that. But for as actual performance goes, I'm pretty sure it's like, yeah, I would say caffeine and creatine monohydrate are the pretty tried and true and well-researched and safe supplements that you could consider adding to your arsenal.
Yeah, something I learned from you, one of my biggest takeaways from talking with you, Matt, is like your food doesn't just go away after one day. It's not like a new day begins and then your stomach is empty and now the day that happened prior is gone and we can forget about it.
Right. Yeah. It's not, it's an ongoing, it's a rolling thing, right? It's not just like an on and off switch every single day. However, of course, yeah, you still like, it's still going to matter that you replenish every single day. You get these things in over time, but yeah, don't freak out too much about things like that. But it looks like we have some questions. So John asked, what if your client is low carb? Is strength slower? Here's the thing. I think that he would potentially, it depends on so many things, but it's like, I would say that they could potentially get better results if they were higher carb. And this is where it's just like, what are your goals? Is your goal to maximize if your goal is to maximize strength and performance, then I would say, yes, I would say a low carb person is not optimizing, is not going to be optimizing their strength. Could it be a very minor difference? Potentially, but it's like, if you're wanting to play all the cards in the right direction, I would say that just let them know like it's definitely a pretty well-known fact as far as glycogen being used in the muscle and being used for anaerobic activity, and that being the most efficient way. Fats just have to be converted through different mechanisms and pathways that are less efficient than carbohydrates. And so it's like, that's just kind of how it is. But if they've always been low carb, if they've seen strength gains, if that's how they enjoy living life, if that's how they adhere to their diet better, makes them feel better, it's like, it is what it is. I'm not too dogmatic on that front. I just want to make sure that they have all the facts, and then they're adults. They can make their own decision based off of that.
I think it's a really good point too, because it also depends where they're starting from as well. I mean, which kind of leads to that third point of like, can you gain strength while being in a deficit? Yes, especially for brand new people who are gonna gain strength at all. And so I think it's such a good point, Matt, of like, if what are the trade-offs of going low carb versus high carb for this person? This is a conversation you can have with every single client. Yes, will you optimize maximal strength? Yes. Will it hurt other parts of their lives and then they're not happy and then they don't want to go, or whatever it may be, or they're doing it because of a medical reason or whatever? Maybe that trade-off's not worth it, and they can still make progress. But yeah, I'm just reiterating what Matt said, but I thought that was a really good point.
Cool. Yeah, Robert asked about BCAAs. For the most part with BCAAs, I think it's now a little bit more clear that if worrying more about your total protein intake for the day is probably going to cover all your bases. However, what I've heard from one of my friends, I thought it was actually good. It's more of like a nice to have as opposed to a need to have, right? And so it's like, if you want to consume some BCAAs during your workout, to, again, like, you have the extra spending money, you like the way it tastes, it allows you to get in some, maybe there's some other electrolytes and things within there. It's like, or maybe if you work out fasted in the mornings, it's like, if you really don't like anything on your stomach at all before you work out, then yeah, sure, consuming some BCAAs pre-workout or intra-workout is going to be better than consuming nothing. But again, yeah, for most people, for sure, it's like, as long as you're getting in enough protein every single day, you're going to have enough amino acids, branched chain amino acids circulating throughout your system that you don't need to worry about that.
Which I think what you just said there was so powerful that I want to touch on was, yeah, it might not provide any tangible, objective performance benefit, but if it, like Matt just said, if it makes you feel better during a fasted workout in the morning or whatever it may be, that's not a zero effect. I mean, how the impact that it has on your mind and your perception of the workout and whatever else matters. Like that's not a 0% sort of impact thing. So often we get wrapped up in the like, well, there's no objective reality or truth to this, and so I'm gonna ignore it and throw it away. And there's merit to that. But you know, there's also merit to if does this open a door to having your absolute best workout 100% versus 90%? Maybe that is worth it. You know, it's all about trade-offs. But I thought that was a really good point because that can be applied to a lot of different things.
Yeah. I mean, placebo effect is very real, you know, like in the sense that it's not real, but it is real. The effects are very real. So it's like, if it makes you feel better, you feel like performance is better, more power to you. It's legit.
As long as it's not harmful, then
yeah. Let's see. So John asks, or can the surplus you talk about come from other nutrients? So I mean, so being in calorie surplus can absolutely come. Typically what I like to do with clients is more so like I will have a kind of like a fat minimum. So it's more so, well, again, it's going to be more so like how can adherence is number one. So seeing how they like what diets they've tried in the past, how they normally eat, that kind of stuff, meet them where they are. That's always going to be rule number one. But then it's like from there, if we're just talking like basic foundation, like what I start from, it's going to be, I'll have like a protein minimum, which is typically around like for most people, it's going to be like 0.7 grams per pound of body weight. And this is actually more for muscle growth. So it's like, I think you could even probably have an argument for even a little bit lower for that with just strength, if strength is purely your main focus. But I feel like 0.6 to 0.7 grams per pound a body weight is a good starting point for most people on getting a protein minimum. And then after that, you could have a fat minimum, which would be, from what I've seen, is like 0.3 grams per pound of body weight. Because with fats, it's more so like, yes, we want to make sure that hormone production is great. We want to make sure that everything is optimized there. Cell health, all these different things. Fats play tons of different roles. And they can also allow us to hit that calorie surplus a little bit easier, especially if you've got to consume, some people got to consume like close to 3,000 calories a day to hit that. And so seeing as how fats are 9 calories per gram, and then proteins and carbs are both 4 calories per gram. So it's like, that's how you can reach that calorie budget for the day a lot more quickly by adding in more fats. But again, I think that there's going to be diminishing returns on if you keep adding more fats, that it then takes away from the amount of carbohydrates you can consume in a day, or if it's preventing you from hitting your protein minimum for the day, right? And so you can absolutely add in more protein, add in more fat to reach those goals. But like I said, for me, I'm typically going to try and maximize carbohydrates whenever performance is my main goal. So I would start with the protein minimum, start with the fat minimum, and then whatever's left over, that's where I would add in the carbohydrates. A carnivore diet, I don't like it. It's like, I think that I would rather you, no. I think that there's just an abundance of evidence talking about how amazing fiber is for you, and vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients from fruits and vegetables and whole grains. I think it's just like, there's not a case whatsoever, especially long-term studies for anything that where carnivore, besides like very special populations, is going to be more beneficial than say a more balanced diet, like especially just from a health perspective. I think that you need anytime you eliminate entire food groups, like you're probably going to have problems, or you're going to just why make it harder on yourself in the first place? Like, I don't know. Of course I understand whatever veganism, vegetarianism, there's different avenues there, but it's like the carnivore diet. I don't think that that's going to be ideal personally.
Well, it seems it often starts from the food groups that they are eating when it comes to their carbs or fiber or whatever aren't ideal sources of those nutrients anyway. And so they think, okay, well, this actually did help me because I moved to carnivore and now I feel so much better. Wasn't actually, obviously it could be, but in many cases, and you can correct me, it seems like it's not actually switching to carnivore. It's removing these other foods or whatever may be from their diets that don't fit in the carnivore diet, but you can also get those same results by adding in better sources of those nutrients.
Totally.
And not just going, yeah.
You can feel better and be healthy. You know what I'm saying? Like, right. you could do both. Is kind of how I see it. All right. And so I think the last one is protein supplementation necessary. If yes, how much is adequate? So supplementation is rarely necessary. Again, besides like special populations or whatever, but I find protein shakes making it super convenient and easy to reach those protein targets, especially if you're busy, if you don't want to, especially if you have a pretty high amount of protein to eat every day, that can sometimes get expensive, or maybe you're not able to eat as much meat in a single day, or from plant products, it'd be even harder. But yeah, quality whey protein is basically like one of the highest quality sources of protein that you can get. So yeah, as long as it's from a good brand and, tested and all those kinds of things, I'm completely on board with like 1 to 2 protein shakes a day, if it helps you reach your goals. So yeah, it's not necessary, but if it helps, it definitely helps. And so he said, how much is adequate? Again, I think starting at like that 0.7 grams per pound of body weight, is going to be pretty helpful.
And do you have a litmus test, Matt, for knowing if a whey is high quality?
Yeah, like legit, like a lot of them now will have the actual labs that you can review on their site. I also think that you can see a stamp from the NSF. I think that is I can't remember what the acronym means. However, that's some type of, what is it? Now I have to look it up. I know I've talked about this before. It is the National Sanitation Foundation. Right, that's what it is. Sometimes you'll see those on labels on protein powders or on ready to drink shakes or something like that. And for the most part with that, I feel like you can guarantee that it's going to be safe. But yeah, for the most part, it's like now companies, they use that as a very big marketing ploy, which is, I think good as far as the lab tested stuff. And so, yeah, you can check into that.
Sweet.
Yep.
All the questions cleared there.
I think so.
I lost my visibility to chat for some reason. It was going so well. And then
yeah.
Zoom's like, wait, you can see chat? That's not right. That can't be happening. Awesome. Right. Yeah, thanks, Matt. From your experiences, Tim, do you have anything to add or share to what Matt just shared?
Well, first, I thought he did an awesome summary. Pretty much, I was just nodding my head. I think we're pretty fine on basically everything he was saying. So that was super good advice. There's probably 2 things I would just touch on. He mentioned a lot of strength athletes sometimes go a little crazy with food intake, especially when you start talking about, super heavy weights, because the way it works in competitions is once you reach a certain weight, there is no disadvantage for being heavier unless you tie the person, which is pretty rare. And so your absolute strength tends to go up as your body weight goes up. We can certainly get into if you guys want. But just be aware. So the question I would always follow up with, if someone's like, well, this dude is, giant, and they're eating fast food 3 times a day or whatever. There's a difference. I'm not denying that it can't work, but that doesn't mean it's optimal. Even if the person has a high level of performance, it doesn't mean that it's optimal, right? So that's a good question to ask. And then, of course, we also want to think longevity, if that matters at all, which once you get there, it matters. How will that affect them? Like CT Fletcher, pretty popular guy in the strength world. He was huge. He was eating a ton of fast food. Then he had a heart attack and was like, oh, shit, I better change my, behavior. And now, he eats a lot healthier. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was, so that question, can you get stronger? Oops, excuse me. can you get stronger without being in a calorie surplus? Well, this actually goes back. This is why I love knowing the basics and why I tried to hammer in my students' heads so much. But what are the basics to building strength? We improve our neuromuscular coordination and we improve our muscle size. Muscle size is very difficult to build when you're not in a surplus, or worse, when you're in a deficit. But can you improve your neuromuscular coordination? Of course you can. Okay. Neuromuscular coordination is simply, that'd be like saying, can I improve my foul shooting when I'm on a calorie diet? Of course. Okay. So if your neuromuscular coordination is not very good and you can get better at the lift, you absolutely can get stronger as a result while you are going down. Now, if everything's already peaked, then of course it's going to be difficult to lose a lot of weight and maintain or continue to improve strength. But just for a regular average Joe who wants to drop 20 pounds and still wants their bench to go up 50 pounds, that can happen, right? Especially if they haven't been training bench for 10 years. Okay. So yes, you can improve your neuromuscular coordination under almost any circumstance.
I absolutely love just because it works doesn't mean it's optimal. I mean, that's such a great lens to look through when we're comparing or when we're seeing other people lift, when we pull back the curtain to other people's routines, when we see what other people do. There's a lot that will be dependent on whether that someone can, like, are they getting away with it? Is this working, despite this thing that they're doing? We often won't have that information just by looking at them and seeing what they do. And so and if someone's at a high level, there's often an assumption that it's optimal. Well, this best person does this. Why wouldn't I do it? I'm so much worse than they are. There's a lot of other factors that make them better in that sport than that one thing that you see, that they're 3 burgers or whatever. Like, we have to consider their genetics. We have to consider what else they're doing. And so I just really, really love that, Tim.
Yeah, buddy.
Sweet. All right. We're going to wrap it up here, talking a little bit about psychology. I'm not even sure of the time, but I think we've been going for about 4 or 5 hours, and we've had 33 people here for like a whole time. So, glad you're hanging around.
Can we be longer than them? There you go.
Yeah. We'll plan to go for another 90 minutes or so, just to, I'm sure this slide will take about an hour. No, but this is really key. Really want to touch on, the mental side of it, because a lot of what we were talking about, even when you go back to the hierarchy, a lot of it is mental, and a lot of adherence is psychology, and a lot of your belief in yourself is mental, and having mental strength and persistence and consistency, and knowing how to overcome certain barriers and valleys and whatever it may be is actually very, very crucial. Obviously to strength, but to any goal. And so I want to specify some of this to strength itself. And the first point is, and Tim, I would love for you to kind of share your thoughts on both of these, but I'll start just by sharing my experience a little bit. Obviously, a lot of clients are looking for fast results. And the semi-unfortunate part from my perspective is that strength can come fast. Again, let's go back to neuromuscular coordination. You lose that quickly. You also gain that relatively quickly. If someone is brand new, you might see massive spikes in everything, or massive progress in everything at the start. And then it slowly slows down as time goes on. We hear a lot of conversation around if you can add 0.5% of body mass or to this after you've been training for 20 years, that's a win. If you've been training for 2 weeks, you might be able to add 40% or whatever it may be to a lift just because you're developing so quickly. And so there's times when it can be challenging especially when there's this desire to make progress quickly. And that's a goal of theirs, to see that progress come fast and then to have it slowly over time just slow down, at least from their perspective. And so I know we've talked a lot about in the past reframing how we're identifying progress. Not every single thing has to be we're only going to celebrate when you hit a new PR, when you hit an all-time PR on the deadlift. That's when I'm going to say really awesome and good job. It's worth celebrating the process wins, and if they're moving in the right direction, even if objectively it's not as big of a win as they had a year ago or whatever it may be, because that can just pose some mental problems, and it's up to us to kind of help reframe that to some degree. Have you experienced that as well, Tim? And do you have any other kind of advice for helping people overcome kind of that mental roller coaster sometimes that can come with strength?
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line to me is strength is awesome because it doesn't come fast, right? What things out there are amazing that you can master in a day? Most things are amazing. You can learn them in a day, but they take a lifetime to master. And so I can learn how to play chess on day one, but I'm going to suck for a long time. But that's one reason why chess has been around for however long it's been around for, and it's held in such high esteem. And you can't buy strength. So, Jeff Bezos may have a whole bunch of cash, but he ain't buying a 700-pound deadlift. And if he wants it, he's got to go work. Now, might he say, screw you, I'm going to go on my island anyway and hang out. And that's fine. But the bottom line is, and I think that's one reason why we respect it, because it takes such significant time and energy. And it's not just strength. I mean, a good physique, high athletic ability, those things all take a lot of work. Sometimes a little genetics thrown in there, but a lot of work. So in order to kind of continue on with that, I would just focus on one of the things I love is working out is all about these little tiny daily goals that then lead to your long-term and ultimately your ultimate goal. And, to me, one of the favorite things in the world is when you have that ultimate goal that you've thought about a long time ago. And then one day you're going to wake up and that's just going to be your daily goal because you are prepared. You want to run a marathon. Well, guess what? You do a little running here, a little running here, a little, and one day you wake up and if you've done right, you're now ready for that marathon. And it's the exact same with lifting heavy. And you want to celebrate all those little wins, an extra rep here, doing an extra set, doing a little bit better form on this lift. This is cleaner now, all those things. And it gives you a lot of feedback. I mean, where else, when you're at work typing papers and stuff, you don't have someone over your shoulder. Oh, great sentence there. That was awesome. Oh, I love the way you wrote that. Right. You don't get that kind of feedback. But in the gym, if you pay attention, you're just getting continuous feedback. How was the lift? How did it feel? How are things going? And so I love the constant, hopefully, if it's a good program, typically positive feedback that just continually builds on itself. And that really, I think, enhances your overall psychology and gets you looking for more, builds up that strength and that confidence. But yeah, the point of diminishing returns is going to be in there. But one of the great things about strength is you do not peak, for a long time. And so you can get in this game and you can keep going. And then all you got to do is look at master athletes, who are over 40 and some 50, 60, 70, even 90 occasionally, people doing some insane things. And hopefully that's pretty motivating to show that it can last a really long time too. So I think there's an awful lot positive going for it.
Yeah, for sure. When it comes to coaching your powerlifting team, are there any patterns in terms of like the mental barriers that people will often run into when they're training that journey? Or is it just so individual based on the person?
There'll be some individual, but I mean, again, if you go back to that 4-minute mile, everybody has landmarks. And it's interesting because in America, most of our focus is on pounds, whereas in, European nations and stuff, it's more kilograms, and they have their own kind of barriers based on those. It shows you just how mental it is. So for example, in the US, 3 plates is a pretty nice landmark, right? Can you put 345s on there and lift it, whatever it is you're trying to do, bench for guys or whatever. Over in Europe, first it's 100 kilos and then 150, and it kind of goes by those things. And so people do often get, when you put that lift up on a pedestal, then it's easy to all of a sudden, oh, gee, I don't know if I can do this. So you can try to do things to get them more used to it. You can play little psychological games. I think people should know what a conversion chart basically says. If you can lift, 150 for 10, what does that mean you can do? And it's not perfect, but if you pay attention, you can really figure out your own conversion chart very well. And then when you do 150 for 12, guess what? Almost for sure your 1 rep max is going up a little bit. That's why you fight and claw for those extra reps. And so that's why you are, even though you're not setting 1 rep PRs all the time, good strength training program, you're setting these little mini tiny PRs. What's your 8 rep PR? What's your 9 rep PR? What can you do for 5? What can you do on incline? What can you do on close grip? What can you do on leg press? And so all these things are all interconnected. And so just focusing a little bit of progress here, chip away at it. Keep on rolling. And then it adds up. If a powerlifter, if they put 50 pounds on their total a year, which isn't a whole lot, 10 or 15 per lift, but you do that for 4 years, all of a sudden now you just added 200 pounds to your total, and that's quite a difference in the sport in terms of where you would rank.
Yeah. And so maybe the first step, if someone wants to build strength and wants to do it quickly, as kind of that first point lays out, the first step as the coach is reframing that perspective, and that strength does not come quickly. Right. And if this is your end goal and you also want to do it fast, then we need to educate as to why that's not beneficial or even possible.
Right.
I mean, there's my old clients love, like, I would just keep track, and if we add 2 sets or 2 reps to a set, and we did 50s for 8 and now we did 50s for 10, and it's just a normal workout, I'll just say things like, that was the best set of that you've ever done since you've worked with me. And I almost position it similarly to a PR. I mean, because it is a PR, but it's not that, oh, you deadlifted 400 pounds, but it was like, you're on the right path. We're making progress. Or you worked out today when you didn't want to, and last time you canceled on me. That's progress. I mean, that's a huge win to celebrate. And so, just love that. Beautiful. Well, Tim, I want to ask you kind of what resources that, if you have any resources that you like to go to for strength or fitness or development. And before you answer, of course, Tim himself has some fantastic resources that we mentioned at the top of the webinar that are also here as well. If you need help finding any of those, of course, just let us know. But if you pop them into Google, you should be able to see them just fine, as well as his website. But is there any people or resources or anything at all that you like to utilize to continue growing in this space, whether it be strength specifically or just in general?
Yeah, I just look in the mirror and have a conversation. It's pretty awesome. So
that's it. Self-belief, right?
That's it. That's all we need. But no, I do have, because my students would ask me this question constantly. So I actually put together a list of recommended readings broken up by topic. So for strength, for bodybuilding, for nutrition, for general, personal training. I have that as a Google Doc, which I'm happy to share with people, and then they can just check it out. I don't know if the best thing to do, maybe just send it to you and you can post a link or something like that. So there's a lot of super classics in there. I think that would be, I think that's probably the easiest way just to kind of get that out. I mean, I do believe that strength is, we exist in a practical field. And so if you thought of a mechanic, for example, I think it would be awesome for mechanics to read books on how engines are built and, how all the system works. But I want a mechanic that has actually got their hands on some cars and broken down some engines and repaired. Only reading a book isn't useful. Just like I would prefer to have a mechanic who only, I would prefer not to have a mechanic who only just watched someone and, never read or learned about the fundamentals of, how the, combustion engine works. And so I think you need a meld of the kind of academic and the practical to really have kind of a deeper understanding. And so I would encourage people to focus, on others who have kind of accomplished that and then are willing to, willing to share their knowledge down the road. But there's a lot of awesome people out there, a lot of awesome authors out there. But like I said, my list is pretty comprehensive because so many people ask me that. It's also in the back of my textbook. So, but I'll be happy to share that.
Oh, this was awesome. Thanks so much, Tim.
Pretty awesome.
Thank you so much.
It was fun to connect, fun to meet some people for the first time. And Alex, always good to see you, my friend.
Yes, likewise. We'll be in touch, of course.
As always, thanks for listening to the Certified Personal Trainer Podcast. You can learn more about fitness mentors at fitnessmentors.com. Be sure to share this podcast on social media. And remember, we are here to help you succeed.